Hi. Thank you for visiting my channel. If you're new here, my name is Miriam. I am an intuitive. I'm a numerologist. I'm just a girl in the world. Um, yeah. I'm popping up because we're gonna be friends, I guess. I don't know. Like that's what seems to happen. Everyone who seems to find my videos tends to resonate on a level that makes me feel kin in a lot of ways. So, anyway, today was an interesting day. I woke up at like 4 in the morning. I went back to sleep a little bit. I was up for a while at 4. Kind of had like sweats and stuff in the night, and I got some messages. I got some downloads saying what I should talk about. And so I have my little paper here. I showed it in another video earlier today. And I wanted to digest on it a little bit because I was trying to figure out how these all connected. The first thing that came up was sex work. So here it goes. That one I don't mind talking about at all. I've been relatively comfortable talking about sex my whole life, unfortunately. Um, and even in my life, I have been a sex worker. Now, not as glamorous as, you know, or as graphic as some would like. But, I still knew what they were doing. I know what my content was used for during that whole Bigfoot model boom. I was one of those. And after a while, it became very draining. And a big part of that became draining because it never seemed like I was giving enough, even though I was making videos for people. There was always this like sense of ownership of me. Because a lot of times, I mean, it was only men. I never had any women. But a lot of times, the men would still expect something from me. They paid me money, so I owe them something. Or in fact, they own me now, even if it was small amounts. Now, it wasn't everybody. There were plenty of really great people there who were like very respectful and understanding and were cool with the arrangements and all of that and did not push my boundaries. And if they did push a boundary that they didn't know about, it be like, hey, this is a boundary that you don't know about. And then they'd know about it. And they'd be like, oh, okay. So, like, y'all are allowed to be like, hey, like, you're allowed to fumble. It's okay. If it's really something that if I'm creeped out, I'm going to tell you I'm creeped out. Don't creep me out, y'all. Leave me alone. Don't be creepy. But I will say, you're creeping me out. You're being kind of creepy right now. So keep a lookout if you feel like you're being creepy. Well, you don't have to keep a lookout. I'll tell you. Anyway. And so a big thing that I like to speak about whenever it comes to sex in general with my clients and all of that, because a lot of people who come to meet me are healing their root chakra and they're healing their sexual relationship. 404 as I say this. And I got 4949, by the way. I have that written down on my paper, 4949. It's hard work to work on the root chakra. It's hard work to work through your sexual things. And for me, it was very confusing why sometimes very sweet people would turn so different because of what their root chakra needed or what they perceived as need. And of course, not all of it was to me. Some of it's just things you hear about in the news and all of that. But esoterically, I found the reason why there was so much that they felt that they were owed was because I was playing part in the coaxing of them releasing their seed. And there is a natural shame, or like, not even shame. Sometimes shame, for a lot of people it's shame, but there's also a natural like decrease of production in general after that. I don't mean it. My bad, y'all. But I meant like just as a level of. I'm gonna stop moving my hands about it. Um, and so yeah, that's really what it came down to. It's like I'm like, oh, I'm helping, essentially helping these people feed their demons. Granted, look, pleasure 555 as I say this, okay? I need you to hear this loud and clear. Love and pleasure and desire and sexual drive and all those things are extremely natural. And doing it with your partner that you can alchemize with, that you can have a pure, kind love that you may have never, ever experienced in your life, that is just so, you won't feel like you're trying to grasp for them. You won't feel like you're just like trying to get their attention. It'll be like, whoa, that's, you really like me so much and you're so all these things. And they're like, yeah, I like you. And they just like, they go and they look for, they just want you. And at 639, as I say this, so I know it's hard to believe it, that you're whole and complete the way that you are already. Like, there's this belief that you have to be perfect before you're in a relationship or something, but you're allowed to grow with your partner. Um, yeah, you're allowed to grow with your partner. That's part of the alchemy together. Even the acceptance in the sexual exchange with a partner can be done in a way that is pure. The expectations that are set on both sides, women, or this is, of course, I'm going to be talking about heteronormal normative sex. Okay, I'm talking about heterosexual sex because this is the sex that I am heterosexual. So I was born this way. I can't do anything about it. um, but specifically with male female, um, and what I've noticed, my expectations that I feel like I've put on myself whenever I've had sexual partners is to give them whatever they need so then they can get that reaction, to have the short circuit of an orgasm. And as a female, or as me, I guess I have felt the pressure to be all of the things, the lady in the streets, the freak in the sheets, and the all the things that cool here, but like just enough aggressive here or whatever. Um, and so often even sacrificing my own enjoyment just to make sure that this is happening. And it's not necessarily like it wasn't still fun times, like there wasn't still a lot of love. Um, but almost even when something doesn't happen, the shame on both sides that is felt because there's so much on society that says, oh my gosh, and this happened, and like, but you're really in love and you're really attracted to this person or whatever. Sometimes when you are having a spiritual sexual connection, there is, I mean, not sometimes, the goal is for there not to be an external orgasm. It's more meant to be an internal orgasm. I cannot believe that this is not even 10 minutes in and I'm talking about this stuff, so you might want to rewind and take notes. Um, and so whenever we're caught in this trap of this feminine cycle, masculine cycle, really what you're noticing here, it is the reason why it's not really fitting and why it's so perverted and a corrupt cycle, and why I stopped taking part in it, because I saw that I was doing harm, unfortunately. or at least not necessarily doing harm, but I wasn't going to keep adding to the cycle of, somebody doing self harm, essentially. Um, but it's also adding to the cycle of feminine energy being giving, give, 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 and masculine energy being receiving, receive, 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 receive. And if you comprehend anything about the esoteric energy of Gnostic energy, about the masculine and the feminine is meant to receive, and masculine is meant to give. And so when masculine becomes taking, that's when the toxicity starts to set in, because it's quite simply not in the nature of masculinity. Masculinity likes to know a goal and then to achieve that goal, whether it be the pleasure of their partner or the pleasure of their partner. Like, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I'll go get you some food. Because I just like the way you look and you smell nice. And I just like it. I just like you. Like, that's all that it's meant to be. And sometimes it gets complicated by, what do you bring to the table? That's not as big anymore, but when you start to accept your purpose of whatever your energy is, more masculine or feminine, but also then the balance of that within you, the giving, the receiving, sometimes it gets so confusing and we feel like we're just not on the right path, or we're just like desperate to understand, why are we feeling this way? Why do I feel so lost? And sometimes it's because we were led astray. And it's not on purpose all the time. I don't think that bunch of people are sitting there in one room and being like, but sometimes there's a bunch of people sitting in a room and talking about stuff. That's just how it works. People hang out. We're communal people, okay? Conspire. But maybe they were just taught wrong. And they were taught wrong before that, the ones who taught them, and like, even if they were taught some of the right stuff, without teaching the entire lifetime of experience that we have learned, sometimes certain lessons will go unlearned in other people's lifetimes. Confirmation group. The best part of swimming is being able to propel your whole body forward with just your arms and hands. And then that connected to, hands are the manifestations of our will. Essentially, our hands do our will. Oftentimes when we are moving, we're using our feet and our legs. And when we're swimming, we can use our feet and our legs too. But in swimming, you can really just relax the rest of your body and get around with your little flippers. And you swim in water. You swim in liquid. I'll just say liquid. You should only really swim in water, y'all. I don't know what else you're swimming in. I don't know how you got so much of that liquid that you could swim in it. Good for you, honestly. Good for you. I'm proud of you for doing your will and stuff. Anyway. And so being able to take that break sometimes, I mean, some people don't really enjoy swimming with the water and the cold and all the process of dealing with water. But I've always connected with it. I've always connected deeply with my hands. I see things through my hands. Like, that's the majority of, that's first person view. We're first person viewing right now. Wow. Whoa, wow, we were my wife. And that's how I grew up. I would compare my hands to my mother's hands, and she'd say, one day your hands are going to be as big as mine. And they are. And I have my mother's hands. We're very similar. Hers are a little bit paler than mine, But yeah. And then my daughter has my hands, you know. And so when we want to do things, we'll be like, oh, I want to grab that. And it's sometimes our hands are already doing stuff before we're even telling them to do it. Sometimes they're doing stuff even whenever we don't realize. Yeah, I'm talking with my hands. Sometimes we're picking at our nails or perhaps touching our hair, soothing ourselves in some way. And when we swim, it's almost like flying. It's the weirdest little flying I've ever seen. Could you? I mean, I could imagine that's how we'd fly. Eventually, oh, okay, let me move through this matter. Just gotta get over there fast. Oh. And figuring out how to swim in your own inner lake of emotions and applying your will to go in a certain direction with your emotions is actually pretty scary. When I was learning to swim, my mom decided she really had to teach me to swim because I really love the water. And I was one of those kids that when we were in like the shallow end and my mom was holding me up and she's like trying to let me go. I'm like, Mom, I'm drowning, help me, help. And she's like, stand up. And I'm like, oh. And it's like to my belly button or something. But I really love the water. And one day my mom was inside and whatnot, and I was like, I want to go play in the water. And so I went to the pool and on my own. There was no one at the pool, and I loved that. I loved the fact that I was alone at the pool. I was probably like 5 or 6 or something, but I was like, ooh, I got it all to myself. There's like, because the pool was closed. It was supposed to be closed. And so I was in the pool and I was enjoying it, and I wasn't familiar with the pool. I didn't know that there was that one drop off that we probably are all familiar with if you've been in a pool. There is that drop off to the deep end, which is just like a slope. So all of a sudden, I was sloped and under the water and drowning. And I don't know how long I was drowning, but I do know that some angel or some spidey sense of my mom's was like, where's Marion? Where's Marion? My stepdad or something at the time was supposed to be watching her. I don't know. And all she saw was my black hair just in the water. Nothing else, just the hair. And she leaps over the fence and pulls me out and saves me. That's my mom. When I'm drowning, she always comes and saves me. Because sometimes I go swimming and I don't know where the drop off is. And so after that, I was only allowed in the deep end. My feet were not allowed to touch the ground because obviously they couldn't. And my mom would stand in the deep end because it was like a 5 foot pool deep, you know. And she's like, all right, come on. And she would hold my hand. And she'd be like, all right, it's the fingertips. And then she's like, all right, my hands are right here in front of you. At any point, just grab for my hands. And she's like, okay. And so I'd come to her. She's like, just swim to me right here. Just to me right here. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, swim to me right here. And I'm like, fine. And I will swim to her. And then she steps out of the way, and all of a sudden, there's the wall. I swam all the way across the pool, just trying to get to my mom. She taught me something called the dead man's float. So if you're ever drowning, the best thing to do is completely relax everything, and you will float to the top. Something about when you're kicking and all that, and your muscles are tense, you become like a stone and you sink, and you tend to lose air. But when your muscles are relaxed, it's almost like you're like a little sponge or something. You're more buoyant. You're more. And that float is something I always do. I love floating. I love floating. And it reminds me that I don't gotta do nothing. I don't gotta do nothing. And look how happy I am doing absolutely nothing. Until somebody comes splashing around in the pool, getting water in my nose. I got a flat face, y'all. It's very easy to immediately get water in the nasal cavity. Anyway. Next thing was 808. And today, it's 6:16 as I say this, so 2102. So when I say this, saw 808 today. I see 808 a lot. Numerology and numerologists used to be called bibliomancy, bibliomancers, arithnomancers, all that. And so essentially I wanted to see just what came up when I just Googled scripture 808. Just that. And the first thing that came up was Ecclesiastes. I am not ever sure if I'm saying that right. 888. Now first I see this because I'm like, I'm not going to find a scripture. But the word ecclesiastical, I've been stuck on that word for weeks. And so whenever I saw Ecclesiastes 22:02 as I say this, I was like, woo! Because I have been literally saying ecclesiastical out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. And so, this is what the scripture is. I wrote it down, so maybe written wrong. As no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the time of their death. And you hear it, and it sounds a bit ominous, don't it? This is going to be a long one, y'all. I'm telling you this 22 minutes in, so... and it gets out a bit like, oh, well, yeah, nobody could predict their death or whatever. And whenever I hear wind, I always think of thoughts. And so, quite simply, if I just change the word from wind to thoughts or the mind, as no one has power over the thoughts to contain it, so no one has power over their time of death, the time of their death. And you say, oh, well, now I got power of my thoughts, so you're saying I have power over the time of my death? Well, yeah, your ego death. Essentially, people are going to have ego deaths over whatever, like they might just have things that cause it from suffering or whatever. But if you are able to be aware of what's going on in your mind and being able to align your chakras and comprehend what is dream and what is consciousness, then you can control when that death happens, as opposed to something that is thrust upon you. Because quite honestly, ego death being thrust upon you is kind of inconvenient. And I'm not saying it's going to be convenient whenever you have the other ones either. It's still going to be a lot of work. But at least it won't catch you off guard as much. And so essentially, an 808 is a 7, by the way. And that's a meditation day, and it's my 7th day anyway. But I've got so much energy. Catch my breath. Ooh, I'm sweating. Oh, Lordy. Okay, I hear you. Ooh. More importantly, it is a 167, which is heart leading, leading with your heart, leading with purity, with kindness, with warmth towards yourself. Um, even in the ego death, even in understanding that the judgment has been passed, that this does not deserve to survive in you anymore. The best part of all this egotistical, Gnostic work and all that stuff is that heaven and hell does exist there for your egos. They may be sent to hell, and then whatever you believe in your stories. But all those egos that you have, essentially need instruction. They are beasts with their own desires and their own drives and their own confusions most of the time. Most of the time, the reason why animals or beasts or whatever will attack, it's not necessarily to eat you, but it's out of confusion and fear. They don't know what your intent is. You don't speak their language. You smell weird or whatever. Now, granted, if there's a lion around, you got to make sure that lion's well fed. And even then, there's some expertise and some work that goes into that. Maybe knowing it since it was a cub or something. But even then, a lot of times it comes from a miscommunication. And a lot of times we are miscommunicating with ourselves. We're assuming the worst of ourselves. We're assuming the worst of other people. Because we kind of assume the worst of ourselves. And so, lastly, this, don't you want a village out here all alone? Was the last thing I wrote down. All right, y'all. I'm hopping off. I got stuff to do. I release this burden. Those who are meant to find this message will find it. My ego feels like this is so desperate for people to understand and to get a hold of. And I have to accept that it's none of my business. And it is none of my business. I'll keep a lookout for the numbers and stay synchronized.